When an old friend was visiting in a dream last night, I didn't think too much of it at first. I was just happy to see them. It was like we were the best of friends almost. We had known each other for a long time. And I felt, used to their presence, accustomed to their little quirks and synchronicities enough to feel just comfortable and trusting being around them. And this was one of my masculine friends when I was younger, like over a decade ago, or who I had thought of as a friend at one point. And we had gone on to have other relationships, and I always tried to be supportive of them in that over the years. And so, like, similarly in this dream, then when a girl pulled up in a car. I asked and kind of like teased him, "Who is that?" He told me it was his girlfriend. I was like, "Cool." Um, happy for him, love to see him happy. And again, I didn't question it too much until after the fact when I woke early this morning. But when we look back on it, I remember thinking, that would have been like a first red flag sign, having been, somewhat close to this person. Like, how had I not known that my friend even had a partner, that they failed to even mention or bring it up? So, again, this is like the first flag, first sign. And then what happened? It was like either he didn't want to bring her in, or she didn't feel comfortable, or there was something going on where uh it was a little sketch. And something happened where there were 3 women in total that ended up showing up in the dream that all had one thing in common, which was this man who was, who I had thought of as a friend for so long. And essentially, what had happened in the dream was none of these women knew each other or knew of each other. And, as the story goes, as this is such a common theme in our world, in order to pull something off like this, he had to have been dishonest, manipulative even, to attempt to juggle and hide his, relationships with these 3 different women. And even though I didn't know any of these women, I felt for them because it just, like, you think on a basic human decency, dignity, respect level, you wouldn't do that to another person. And it has nothing to do with them necessarily being women, although I tend to be a bit more protective over women and children by nature, because of my own sensitivities. I just feel like as humans, we don't do that to each other for a variety of reasons. So my instinct kicked in there of being protective over these women, being offended even at his behavior. And I remember feeling even a sense of shock that he would do something like this, because again, I was like, I thought of him as a friend for so long. And at the same time, in the midst of the dream, when I was experiencing it, it was from a more pure place of just like that heart space of like, this is someone who I know and I love, and not taking into any like real dynamics in this reality of how I've known or experienced this person. In the dreamland, it's completely different, where it's just like, yeah, no, he would never do something like that. Whereas here in this life, we know much better, right? So it was kind of funny after the fact. But going back to what had happened, my instincts kicked in. I was pissed, to say the least. And all 3 of these women were standing side by side in this room with my male friend and me. And then there was like one other guy friend with us as well, of his more so than me. And so we had a little party going on. Not really, but like as far as the amount of people that were in there and the drama and chaos that was ensuing. Although it was very quiet and peaceful on the outside. Like no one was flipping out, no one was like doing or saying anything really. It was just like this is a situation. We're all here in it. And I could tell by looking at these three different women that they all looked uncomfortable and hurt and confused, and they were put in this position, which again, like it's a whole other thing we have to question. Like, how did they even get themselves in this position, like in this very moment here all together? Like, was this something that he had arranged, or, like what are the chances that this would happen by, I don't know. It was a little odd, but we weren't questioning that at the time. So I'm looking at these women and I'm seeing the emotions on their faces and in their body language. And, almost like experiencing with them, right? Like, and feeling this intense anger welling up inside of me. And I turn towards him, like without even saying anything to any of these women. I just see the hurt and the pain on their faces as they're standing there, almost a little like shy themselves and like taken aback and like not feeling comfortable enough. Or again, they're confused as hell. So like none of them are necessarily speaking up and saying anything. They don't know what's going on. But as a friend of this person, right, and as any good friend would perhaps do, you would speak up. You would think you would say something to your so-called friend and call them out on their shitty behavior. Like, this is not okay, right? And we go back to things like the golden rule, do unto others as you would have done unto you, right? Like, how would you feel if you were in this situation? If one of these girls that you were seeing or messing around with brought you into a room with two other men that she was hiding behind your back and had you sitting there looking stupid? Of course, he wasn't thinking about that. But, I went ahead and said a few choice words to him in that moment. And one of the words that came out of my mouth specifically that I remembered when I woke up was consent. And while I tried to leave my own personal feelings, opinions, biases out of it as I was addressing him, I kind of approached it from what's the word? A factual or like, this is the way it is kind of place. Like, but I was clearly very angry. I couldn't believe that he would do something like that. And I also couldn't believe that this was someone that I had called a friend and that I was associating myself with someone like this. Because again, that was a part of the more hidden or shadow nature of that person. And after chewing him a new one in the politest way possible, I turned to these women and I forget what I said to them exactly. I was trying to like comfort or console them or something and let them know very clearly that like what had happened here had absolutely nothing to do with them, was not their fault. They did absolutely nothing wrong. And he was a complete and utter reject asshole. And the dream pretty much ended from there. Not much that I can really remember, other than the other guy that was in the room with us, if you remember me mentioning him, who wasn't friends with me, was friends with my guy friend. He had spoken up at some point and said something in like defense or support of our shared mutual masculine friend. And I don't even know that I said anything to him directly, just like shot a glance at him, and he just, as he should. And this is, again, also a common theme we see in this reality, where not only men, women will do this as well. All people of all genders and identities. It has nothing to do with that. It has more to do with our own shadow, hidden nature and our own wounding. But it's just how it played out in this dream as we're telling the story. So, oh my gosh, it's already 9 minutes. I sat down as I got home from work to make a cup of tea, and I was like, while it's brewing, I can make a short little video. This is not as short as I thought it was going to be. We get carried away. Nevertheless, we're going to carry on with our story here. So I woke up early this morning. It was like 4 something in the morning, a bit earlier than we normally do. And this dream was on my mind. And, the word consent kept rolling around in there. And a common phrase that I had playing through my mind the past year and a half, 2 years or so now, as we've been contemplating and healing through a lot of things during our Saturn return, which is ending later this week, which has everything to do with what we're talking about here. So one of the phrases that has been rolling through our mind during this time is, I do not consent to this. I do not, I will not, I have not, if not, I will not ever consent to this. And it's interesting because on one hand, like, I have had to think and say and remind this to myself on multiple occasions, in regards to, several different things going on in my personal life. More so to do with like changes in work and my career because of Saturn being in Pisces and in my 10th house. It had very much mostly to do with that area of my life. And so I had to look at areas within my career where I felt like I was undervalued, underappreciated, not being treated with simple, basic levels of respect and human decency. And so I had to make some difficult decisions around how I was going to make changes there, where I was going to walk away from certain people that I once worked with and find different, ways to do what I love still, and also move in, some other different directions. But not to get too carried away with any of that. Going back to the dream and back to consent as the topic here. So I'm like, where to begin? We have so very many stories to tell, and this will be just the first of those many. But, going back to real life, reality, this reality at least, and this person particularly, right, who is a real person that I knew and once considered a friend, and how they have truly existed outside of the dream. One of the phrases he had said to me a long time ago was that he didn't think or feel or want to be friends. And at that very first sign of him saying that would have been a clear indicator to me that, like, this is not a real or genuine true friendship. But I was much more naive back then. And so, he said this thing, but still showed a lot of, attention and care and certain levels of reciprocity that I was like, oh yeah, this is my friend. But in reality, he had always wanted something more. And so any form of friendship that I tried to have with him ultimately fell apart and, like, was not going to last. And I felt very heartbroken at that for a long time and didn't understand why, because I really enjoyed having my male friends just as much as I did my female friends, but found that it was a pattern in my life with my male friends that they had this similar thing going on, right? Where they didn't uh, approach most women, or, from my experience, me in particular, with that intention in mind of having friendship. And so for me personally, right, I've always felt like for any relationship that we have, whether it is purely platonic friendship or if it's more romantic, if it's familial, if it's business, there are different levels to friendship, but I feel like as a very, like, basic foundational level, it is very helpful and even necessary on many levels to have some sort of, like, base line of friendship or acquaintanceship at the very least, right? Where, like, we have mutual respect and honor for each other, where we treat each other well, as, like, human beings. Aside and apart from any other feelings or thoughts we might have. But lo and behold, we had learned one too many times the hard way that not everyone thinks this way, not everyone feels that way, not everyone cares to develop friendship in their relationships. And that is okay. That was a hard one for me a long time ago. But again, with this being brought up in the dream last night and touching on the topic of consent and how this has played a role in my life throughout our Saturn return here, it's brought up a lot of emotions, especially. And having dealt with certain situations outside of work too, that I felt sprung upon me. Also, in that hidden, shadowy aspect, those realms of deceit and and lying and lurking and creepiness and stalking even. Oh yeah, we've been going through it. We've not that we're going to get into all of that today. Again, those are stories for another day, but when I was doing a little bit of reading up on consent, right, and looking into the etymology of it, which is something I enjoy doing in my free time, and there are several different definitions for it, but I think a very simple, basic understanding is feeling and thinking together. When you break the word apart, it's, to feel and then together. And this is very interesting, right? Because the way that consent has been taught to us many times or described, or that we have learned it through outside sources, at least for me, it's like a lot of what I have seen and heard has had to do mostly with like male and female relationships and like romantic relationships and sex, but there hasn't been a whole lot of talk or as much, or it's not as well known on the topic of consent and boundaries outside of those areas, like on a personal, individual, one-on-one level with ourself first and foremost, and then with our, closest circle of people around us, family and friends, and then, in the wider community. And from the point of view that it would mean for all of us to feel something together or to feel for and with another person, it takes on a new meaning, right? Because most situations where we find ourselves in a place where someone is not taking our yes as yes and our no as no, where people are pushing against, not accepting, or fighting our answer when we choose not to give consent to a situation where we don't want to share a part of ourselves with them to whatever degree. It's like that's where there's this disconnect in people, where the other person that would not be understanding or caring even, of what we are wanting in that moment in time, I mean, it's like in that moment, the other person would be completely disregarding your wants and needs and desires, your own well-being. So much so to the point that, they may take an action that would be considered non-consensual. And again, this goes many different layers. And I know too that like even talking about the topic of consent can be a loaded topic, loaded word, triggering to some people. And so I'm sorry if that's happening here. But I just wanted to chat a little bit, talk about this story. There's probably going to be a lot of that, honestly, as we move forward here. Let's go on in the future. So just a fair warning for you, because we're not going to be able to do that with every story we tell, but, I get it. I understand. It's also good to recognize and understand that when we do feel that little twinge of discomfort or pain even at the thought of something or the way that it sparks a certain emotion in us, that those experiences, however small or big they may be for us, is ultimately for our own healing and to bring things to the surface, to the light, that are hurting us so that they don't have to hurt us anymore. And I know that that can be a very hard, scary, intimidating thing to do, but it is possible, and it doesn't have to be as hard or scary as it feels. But I know easier said than done. But that is also in part why we're here and why we have our stories to tell, because I very much love people. I always have. That could be in part due to our personality here, as well as a variety of different things. But I just wanted to offer this as like an initial little crumb of affection from me to you, of a story, of a dream, and just a little tidbit of a greater vision that I have, that I also believe I share with many people, particularly you. If you're coming across this, perhaps you would resonate with this on some level. You would have your own experiences, and at the heart level, right, we are all similar, if not entirely the same, as far as we share in our heart space. And so, again, going back to the meaning of consent, or what the word originally was intended as for its use, was to feel together, to feel with another person, if not many people. And so it's important in our interactions with others, but even more so with ourselves first, to get to know ourselves a bit better and ask ourselves, what is it that I truly want for myself, for my life, for my future? And if that feels a bit overwhelming and like way too much to even touch on, which, I understand too. We don't get so carried away. That's the Virgo in me, though, my Virgo moon, and a few other placements where I'm like with everything. Just, I got outlines, I got lists, we got, plans for everything. Not that we follow through with them all, but we got them. And so even if it's as simple as like this very day, or even this very moment when you're watching this, when you come across this, taking a moment to ask ourselves, what is it that I want in this moment? Do I even really want to fucking be here and watching this bitch? But like, what would be the best use of my time? What would make me feel the best at this moment? What do I really, really want to do with myself right now? Is it this, or is it something else? Originally, when I came home, what I wanted to do was I wanted to go for a late night walk and process some things. And because I wear like individual headphone in my ear, like one at a time throughout the day while I'm working, that means that the other one is not charged at the same time as the other one, right? So I was like, shit, I gotta charge up my headphones so that I can listen to my music and stuff, when I go for my walk. So I was like, we're gonna let that charge while we make our little tea, and it'll be fine. We're gonna put it off. And that led us to going ahead and making this video. Which I also wanted to do, but it wasn't particularly at that point in time. But then, right, something happened that kind of interrupted what we really wanted to do in that moment. And so then it was like, well, what's the next thing? And I was like, this is what I want to do. And it plays into something that I've been wanting to do for a very, very long time, which is be here and stay here with you and provide whatever it is that I can at any given moment in time, through things like this, through sharing, through our little stories and our dreams and our impulses and our studies and our, whatever the fuck comes up at any given moment in time. Yeah, because that's kind of how things work around here. A little bit of complete chaos, but a lot of fun. Okay, that's all. I hope that came out concise enough that we were able to round out that message and get to our point. you let me know, or not, whatever. Just, here's my little offering to you. Yeah, it's just, a way to think about consent, of it being a place in the heart and a feeling. And I would say with that, right, if any person that is pushing back against your no, particularly, who might be having trouble of their own with it, honestly, fuck them. what you want and what you do with yourself in your life has nothing to do with the people who have a problem with that, who take issue with you and your choices. So they can fuck the right off. Fuck the fuck off, bitch. Okay. You can tell them June said that. But seriously, apart from that, there are people who will love you and support you for all the decisions that you make. Yeah. They'll support you in what you say yes to and what you say no to. Without a question, without a bat or blink of an eye. That will not push back against you. That will not play games with you. That will not manipulate you. That will not purposefully hurt you. Like, there are good people who will love you and who will treat you well, with dignity, with respect, with honor, with love, real love, healthy love. And my hope and my prayer and my wish for any of you that would come across this is that you would see and feel that for yourself, within your heart. If you feel with me here, consent to feel with me here in the heart space. Yes, just breathe. We are all very, very loved for who we are. And it makes me very sad to see certain aspects of the state of the world being the way that they are, particularly when it comes to our relationship dynamics with each other and how those dynamics continue to trickle out and down and affect those who are most vulnerable in the population, which has included, many of the women, the children, people of different religions and races and ethnicities and identities. And that is something that I have taken strong issue with for a long time. And I have held my tongue for a very long time as I was going through my own journey of healing and growing. And again, our Saturn return in the lovely sign of Pisces has really pushed us to open our fucking mouth. So that's all.